everyone. We're so glad to have you here at our Power Forum. Today, we have our special guest, Susanne Mariga, who is going to walk us through the Profit First methodology. We are so excited to have Susanne. Um, and welcome her to the BCPA community. Before we get started, I just give a brief introduction of who she is and why we are so fortunate to have this remarkable leader here with us today. Susanne Mariga is a certified public accountant and a leading business consultant known for her expertise in financial strategies, particularly in helping small to mid-sized businesses achieve profitability and scalability. She is the founder of Mariga Group, a firm that specializes in implementing the Profit First methodology, which is a cash management system designed to help businesses increase their profitability by focusing on allocating profits first before managing expenses. Susanne is also the author of the book Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, written in collaboration with Mike Michalowicz under the Profit First brand, which adapts the Profit First system for unique challenges faced by minority-owned businesses. In addition to her work as fractional CFO and author, Susanne is a speaker and podcast host where she shares her insights on entrepreneurship, finance, and achieving business success. So without further ado, let's welcome Susanne. Thank you so much for being here with the BCPA community, and we're really looking forward to your guidance and how you can teach us to put profits first.
Thank you, Alyssa, for such the wonderful introduction. We've got an exciting hour ahead, and I do love participation, so definitely feel free to chime in and share. But first of all, I like to ask any of you that are joining me today, how many of you have actually heard about Profit First? If you can drop that in the chat, if you've heard about Profit First, I'd love it. Who here has heard about Profit First? WG has, Danielle, Daleli has heard about it. Good. John has heard of it. Okay. All right. We've got, it looks like about 30% RLs. Okay, so now we're at 40 and Abele. Okay, 50% of you guys have heard about it. All right, good. I'm glad. So a few of you guys have heard about Profit First, and Profit First is such an important concept, first of all, and it's so important that I actually wish that they taught this in school more. Do you guys see my screen? I'm not sure if it's showing or not, or if it is showing.
Yes, we can
here.
see it.
Okay, wonderful, perfect. And in fact, Profit First is actually being taught in some of the Ivy League schools now, which I find really exciting. I know my book right behind me, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, was actually being taught in Texas A&M. So as part of their adult entrepreneurship courses, I was really excited about that. And I'm even more excited that everyday colleges are now reading Mike Michalowicz's book, and they're putting it as part of their curriculum, because that means the concept is spreading. And I'm more excited that business owners are learning the concept and we're creating intentional profitability. So very excited about this. My introduction to Profit First actually happened completely by accident. I had started my business 17 years ago. And like many of you guys that started your business, I started my business when I had just had my baby girl, Florence. And I literally left for maternity leave and never came back, left my corporate job. However, I really love the world of accounting and tax. And I had this dream of providing Big Four level accounting and tax services to small businesses who traditionally couldn't afford the service. And what I was going to do was I was going to do what I absolutely love to do. I was going to super serve my clients. I was going to work really hard. And I believe that naturally profits would follow. That was my belief. That was the American dream, that if we work really hard and we super serve our clients and we do excellent work, then naturally profits would follow. I mean, isn't that what everybody believes? How many of you guys have believed that? Can you give me a hand raise if you heard that rumor too, that if you work really hard and super serve your clients and naturally profits will follow? All right, so I'm seeing yes, there's some folks that have got that message too. And it was interesting, being a MBE myself, I was actually taught growing up that we had to work 3 times harder just to be seen as average, right? Was what I was taught. And what I found after 3 years in my business of doing just that, working really hard, super serving my clients, was I found that there had to be something more to this than this equation. In fact, what I found was that I was working way harder in my in my own business than I ever did in a corporate job. And the sad part was I had nothing to show for it. I didn't have time to spend with my family. I had literally started my company to have work-life balance. And I was finding that my daughter was being raised by a nanny and I had nothing to show for it. And I had nothing to show for it because I was reinvesting everything back into the business, right? Because there was a rumor that you don't take profits, right? You keep reinvesting back into your business to grow it. And I was thinking that getting more revenue was absolutely the right way to go because that was scaling, right? I was focusing more on the final number than what I was focusing on the bottom line. And what was happening was I wasn't paying myself because I was prioritizing everything else and everyone else above the things that I wanted. And I didn't have a company retirement because I was just focused on the today, right? And I'm embarrassed to say that I had started to accumulate corporate debt. I had started to accumulate credit cards, lines of credit, and I was in that vicious cycle of reinvesting proceeds back into scale, then getting debt. And then later on when revenue rose, I was just paying off the debt, right? Was what was happening. And I remember one Sunday night, my husband literally sat me down at the kitchen table and he said to me, he was holding my daughter in his hand. I can clearly envision it. He said, Susanne, he said, we hardly get to see you. You're always working. And frankly, you're not contributing to the household. And he told me that if I was going to be working like this, he'd rather see me get a job, right? Because then at least I would get paid. And I remember when he said it, it absolutely broke my heart. And it broke my heart because he was absolutely right. For all of my hard work, I had nothing to show for it. You see, I had made more in my corporate job. I had more personal time. I was a manager, so I could share the workload at pretty high and consistent pay because of my position. And frankly, there were still a lot of opportunities out there, right? Recruiters were still calling me and asking me if I wanted to come back into a corporate world or corporate job. And it was a pretty hard situation to be in. And it wasn't until it snapped that I had to set my intentions, right? That I had to really figure out what was important to me. And then once I figured out what was important to me, began to align every action to create intentional profitability, that I really began to live out the business that I truly wanted. And today, I absolutely have the business of my dream, right? And I'm going to teach you too how you can achieve that using the profit first method. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to talk about how you can implement profit first in your business so that you can create an intentional bottom line. And so first of all, I want to talk about why is profit so important. And I'm going to ask you guys to participate a little bit in the chat with me here. And I want you to give me some ideas. Why is profit so important? Can you guys tell me why profit is so important? Who knows? Why is profit so important? Like, why are we having this conversation today? Chris says to create wealth. Yes, that is very important. Why else is profit important? Cash is king. Sal, I absolutely agree. Cash is king. Why else is profit so important? Keep the stress low and let you reinvest to grow. Exactly, Daleli. Jennifer allows you to serve more clients. Exactly. When you can pay payroll, you can serve more clients and serve them with quality. Absolutely. I agree with you. I love that. Thank you guys for sharing. Grow or die, exactly, because Lonnie, you're absolutely right. When that cash runs out, your business will die, right? So it's either grow or die. And you're absolutely right with that. And so many reasons why we want to have profitable businesses, right? Because at the end of the day, profitability allows you to scale your business, right? Because at the end of the day, if you do not have profitability, you cannot reinvest back into your business. You can't buy the equipment, you can't hire the best and the brightest people. And so having profitability to grow your business is really important. Also, you need profitability so that you can build retained earnings, right? So you don't have to rely on debt because, how many of you guys have been in a situation where you've gotten access to capital, where you've gotten a loan and you've actually increased your revenue, but then you find yourself in a situation where you're not able you don't really have excess cash flow because now you're just servicing those loans. You're actually paying off those loans and you actually need to borrow for your next expansion. How many of you guys have been in that situation where that's happened, that this money that's supposed to be a loan to grow revenue ended up being just a cycle that you couldn't get out of, right? Okay, I'm getting a couple of yeses. You guys understand me. And that is a vicious cycle that we don't want to be in. And the only way out of that is thank you. I'm glad that you guys have seen this too. The only way to get out is to be able to cash flow your own business. And this methodology will help you do that. Also, I think that it's important to be profitable because unplanned emergencies will happen, right? There will be a client one day, if you're in the government sector, that will be slow paying. There'll be collections that just aren't there one month. I think COVID-19 recently that happened a few years ago was a real test of our profitability and our cash management as a nation, right? They said when the PPP loans came out, a lot of the small businesses couldn't get a PPP loan because all of the bigger businesses that had relationships with bankers were actually first in line. Do you guys remember that happening? And it was a testament that, cash flow isn't just a small business problem. It's a big business problem too, right? And so, COVID-19 was a real test to our profitability. And I'm proud to say that our firm, we never had to lay off during COVID because we had implemented a strong cash management system already in place that allowed us to build retained earnings, which was really great there. And so, and then finally, I'm going to say profit is the reward. It's the reward for you as a founder and for the investors for taking a chance and believing in something when nobody else would. I don't know how many of you guys started a business and your family said, what, you're quitting your job? Oh, no, don't do that. This profit is that reward for you taking that risk, taking that chance and building something that really changes the world. It's that reward for that job well done. And you guys should be proud of that. And so my question for you is, if profit is so important, why do so many small businesses fail? Right? Because obviously profit is important. We all know that it's important. We're here for this conversation today. Why do so many small businesses fail? And I'm going to read off some stats for you, first of all. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that 20% of small businesses will fail within their first year. 20%. 50% of these small businesses will fail within 5 years. And then by the 10th year in business, about 65% of these businesses will have failed. So when you're looking to the left or to your right and you're looking at your neighbor on Teams, in 10 years, 65% of you statistically will not be there. And so the question is, if profits are so important, and we innately know this, right? Why are so many small businesses failing? So I have good news for you. The results that you have achieved so far in your business are not your fault. And what I mean is that we are biologically and psychologically wired to build businesses that fail. And what I mean is that we are wired and trained to behave in the manner that we do. And I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail. For example, in school, right, we're taught this beautiful accounting equation, right? We've all seen it. Revenue minus expenses equals profit. This is US generally accepted accounting principles. And I love this equation. I went to school to learn this equation. I actually passed the CPA exam because I could algebraically solve for this equation in just about any way. But there's a problem with this equation. And the problem with this equation is that when we're taught this equation, we're taught as entrepreneurs and as a nation, right? The focus on sales, right? Focus on sales, discount your prices if you have to, but whatever you do, make that sale, right? That's the message that we give our entrepreneurs in schools. And then we are taught, then be responsible, right? On the expense side, be responsible, pay your bills and pay them on time. And then naturally, profits will happen, right? This is what this equation means. And what happens is that these entrepreneurs, they focus on sales, right? They discount their prices, they make that sale, they pay their bills on time, but profit becomes literally an afterthought, right? And for most entrepreneurs, it's never anything to get excited about. In fact, the average profitability on $1 million business, who can tell me what the average profitability is on $1 million business? Who knows what the average profitability on $1 million business? Can anybody tell me what that is? Luis, you guessed it. It's 5%. That is the average profitability on $1 million business, 5%. Do you guys know how hard it is to get $1 million in sales? Do you know how hard that is? And to make $50,000? Most of you can make more than that in a W-2 job. And as a result of this, these businesses, right? The Bureau of Labor and Statistics tells 65% of businesses end up closing their doors. And they close their doors because the owner realizes that he or she can make more in a W-2 job. And then there are biological factors at play, right? There's something called Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law teaches us that our demand for a resource increases to meet the supply. So that means we as humans, we're efficient creatures, meaning that the more you give us of something, the more we're going to use, right? And on the contrast, the less you give us of something, the less we're going to use, right? Because we are not going to waste anything, right? We are efficient creatures. And what Parkinson's law teaches us is that work expands to fill the time available for completion. For example, if you're given 2 weeks to finish a project, it's going to take you 2 weeks to finish that project. If you're given 1 day to finish that project, you're going to finish it in 1 day. And I like the example that Mike Michalowicz gives in his book, the dieting example. And what we're taught when we ever go on a diet, one of the first things that we're taught when we go on a diet is to use a smaller plate, right? And we're told to use a smaller plate because when we use a smaller plate, we eat less. And it's similar to like the hors d'oeuvre dinner. When you go to hors d'oeuvre dinner, you're going to eat a lot less, and you're going to eat a lot less because the plate is smaller, right? There's only so much food that you can fit on this plate, and you don't want to be the person that's going up to the table over and over again and refilling your plate, right? So you're going to eat less at an hors d'oeuvre dinner versus going to the all-you-can-eat buffet, right? When you go to the all-you-can-eat buffet where the plates are like 12 inches and probably bigger than the average size, and there's no shame in going up over and over again, you're going to eat a whole lot differently, right? And what's happening is it's Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law, when the plate is smaller, when there's less resources, when there's social pressure, you're going to consume a lot less than when there's plenty. And this is the same way that it works in business. In business, when the economy is flowing and cash is plenty. You guys remember PPP loans, EIDL, that was happening, right? The ERC credit, right? When money is plenty, my entrepreneurs ask me questions like, Susanne, What about that corporate car? I need a tax write off. And I saw something on TikTok that if I buy that 6,000 pound gas guzzler, I'm going to get like a $25,000 tax deduction. Is that true, Suzanne? Can you do that? Or they ask me questions like, can I travel to some exotic places where I can attend some classes and get some tax write-offs? Or, hey, Suzanne, I feel like this is going to be my year. This is going to be the year that I finally outgrow my current office location, and that space next door, well, it just became available and it might not come available for another 10 years. Can I go ahead and upgrade into that new office space? Because I feel like this is going to be my year that I finally outgrow it. Now, on the other hand, right, when the economy is questionable, right, like when we're wondering, who's going to be our next president, there's some looming global political issues that are happening. My entrepreneurs are asking me different questions, right? They're asking me questions that are based upon scarcity. They're asking me questions like, Suzanne, what expenses can I cut right now to make it through this time? Or how can I gracefully let go of some of my team members? Because right now we're struggling to make payroll and the sales just aren't there, right? And what's happening is that these entrepreneurs have, unbeknownst, been influenced by Parkinson's law. And literally the only difference between the situation is the cash availability. Because there's less cash, the questions now are different. And so my question for you becomes, what would happen if you decided to work with your natural human tendencies, right? What would happen if you decided to work with your natural psychological and biological makeup? What would happen if you said, I love this accounting equation. It's great for my banker. It's great for those government contracts that I'm applying for, but this does not work for creating intentional profitability, right? What would happen if you said, this equation isn't going to work with me, so I'm just not going to follow it, right? I'm just not going to follow it. And instead, what I'm going to do is I am going to prioritize my profits, right? I'm going to take my profit first. So instead of prioritizing my expenses and paying my expenses first, I'm going to pay my profits first. What would happen if you decided to take your profit first? And so today, I'm going to teach you the key concepts that are found in my book as well as Mike Michalowicz book here, Profit First. So one of the first things that I want to say is that Profit First, first of all, is not an accounting system. Okay, so whatever you do today, do not go and call your accountant after this meeting, be like, I saw this brand new accounting system called Profit First and I want to implement it. First of all, your accountant will probably lose his hair and he will yell as soon as he get off the phone. So we are not changing your accounting methodology. You still need to keep your accounting system. Like I said, is needed for your tax returns, is needed for your government contracts, is needed for your banker. Keep the accounting system. But today we're going to be implementing a cash management system. And it is a cash management system that was designed by author Mike Michalowicz. And literally, it's a system that's designed to create intentional profitability within your business. And what happened was that Profit First Professionals Corporation, they conducted a study of what does a healthy company looks like. And these represent common size percentages of what a healthy company looks like. And one of the things that you're going to notice is that the percentages differ, right? They differ based upon the revenue category of the business. For example, when that company is really small, right? When you're under $250,000 in revenue, I like to call this category A here, right? And you're under $250,000 in revenue, this is pretty much a one-man show, right? You've got the owner doing all the work. He's answering the phones, he's fulfilling the orders, he's probably cleaning the bathrooms while he's doing all this at the same time. And as a result of this, 70% of the revenue is going towards the owner's benefit, right? It's 5% going to profit, 50% going to owner's pay, 15% going to tax. So 70% of what's being collected is going to the owner because he's doing all the work and he deserves to be compensated in that way. Now, as this company grows, right? And this owner now becomes reliant on the power of his team. He can't answer the phone, fulfill the orders, and clean the bathroom all at the same time. And by the time he's at 10 million in revenue, he still gets a salary, but it's a smaller percentage in comparison to the total revenue as a whole. But what's happening is that 65% of the revenue is now going towards operating expenses because it's needed to support his team, is what's happening here. And so, one thing that I'm going to mention for you is that, these percentages change over time. And if you're not at these percentages today, it really is a journey. So do not panic if you're not at these. But these are typically what we see in a healthy company. And these are the goals that we do want to get to one day. And what's going to happen in Profit First is we're going to create bank accounts. And there's going to be a minimum of 5 different bank accounts. And what's going to happen is we're going to create this illusion of scarcity. Okay, we're going to create this dieting effect. And we're going to create that through the use of bank accounts. Okay. And what's going to happen in Profit First is that we are going to create multiple bank accounts in order to do this. So we're creating multiple bank accounts to create this illusion of scarcity. And it's very similar to Dave Ramsey's envelope system. You may have heard of Dave Ramsey's envelope system, where as soon as you get your paycheck, money is allocated into different envelopes according to various purposes. You might have an envelope for groceries. You might have an envelope for rent or mortgage. You might have an envelope for dining out, but you have an envelope for every single purpose of your life. And that's how it's going to work in Profit First, except in Profit First, we're not going to keep envelopes because that would be a security risk, and we don't want any of you guys keeping envelopes. We're going to keep bank accounts. And what's going to happen is you're going to have 5 different bank accounts. So you're going to have a bank account called the income account. You're going to have a bank account called the profit account. You're going to have a bank account called the owner's pay account, a bank account called tax account, and a bank account called the operating expense account. So 5 different bank accounts. And what's going to happen is money is going to be collected in one bank account, which is going to be called the income account throughout the month. So all your money is coming into this income account. And then twice a month, on the 10th and 25th of the month, you're going to allocate to various bank accounts according to their purposes. So you're going to allocate to the profit bank account. You're going to allocate to the owner's pay bank account, the tax account, and the operating expense account. Now, I do want to say something here. What you're going to find is that we allocate revenue according to a percentage. So every account receives a percentage. And these percentages are going to line up to the percentages that we saw here, is what these percentages is going to line up to. So what's going to happen is you're going to allocate a percentage to your profit bank account. And this means that you are automatically profitable on day one. Can you believe that? You're profitable on day one. It's physics. Like literally, if you take money from your income account and you deposit it into a profit account, you are profitable on day one. It's sheer physics. And while the Bureau of Labor and Statistics is telling you that 18% of small businesses will fail the first year, you've already beaten the odds because you are profitable on day one. The next bank account that you're going to allocate is to that owner's pay account. A lot of times when I sit down with entrepreneurs and I talk with them and I ask them, who's your most valued player? Who's your MVP? Who's that person on your team that you could never, ever get rid of, right? And they'll always tell me it's Johnny, it's Susie, it's Mike, but none of them have ever told me that it was themselves. But the reality is, if it wasn't for you having started that business wouldn't exist today, right? And as the founder of the business, you're the thought leader behind that business. You're the passion, right? Your passion is the feel of that business. And the day you walk away from your business, I promise you it will cease to be the same. And so just like you would never allow Johnny, Susie, or Mike to go without a paycheck, neither should you. And just like you would never allow Johnny and Susie and Mike to go without a raise, you shouldn't either. And that's why in Profit First, we allocate to the different bank accounts based upon a percentage. And we allocate a percentage because as your revenue increases, So should your share in owner's pay. Your owner's pay should rise, right? Because your performance is getting better if you're increasing revenue. And so you deserve more owner's pay, right? And you deserve more profit. You deserve to share more in the profit because that's the reward for you having done a job well done. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs that when they make it to like $100,000 in salary, they're so excited that they made it there that they never go above it. And that's one of the faults of not assigning a percentage allocation to that, because you want to be compensated based upon the performance of your business. Now, the next account that you are going to do that you're going to fund is going to be your tax account. And it's interesting because as a CPA, one of the questions that I always see clients panicking with is, how am I going to pay last year's taxes with this year's money, right? And on April 15th, these entrepreneurs, they're like in a state of panic. Like literally they're calling their CPA and they're like, can you get me an IRS installment plan? And I've even seen like the worst case scenario where they've actually borrowed from their IRA accounts in order to pay the IRS. By the way, big mistake. Never do this. Not only will you pay the tax on the distribution from an IRA account, but you'll pay a 10% penalty on an early distribution from an IRA. But I have good news for you. Taxes will never be your problem again because you're going to be allocating to your tax bank account, right? On the 10th and 25th of the month, you're going to be allocating to your tax bank account. So you're going to have the money just in case you need it. Now, most likely all this money won't actually go to the IRS, but you have it there just in case. And the great thing about it is you're not going to have it all go to the IRS because you're going to be meeting with your tax accountant throughout the year, hopefully at least quarterly, because you're going to be talking about tax strategy, estimated taxes and profit, right, with your accountant every quarter, because now you're practicing profit first. And the last account, after you funded your profit account, your owner's pay, your tax account, the last account that you're going to fund is going to be your operating expense account. And this is the account where you're going to decide, you're going to make decisions. This is where you're going to pay your bills. This is where you're going to make decisions such as, can I afford to upgrade into that new office space? Can I afford to bring on that new support staff and increase my payroll expense? Can I afford to buy that new computer, right? And this is the account that you're going to create that illusion of scarcity, because instead of all your money being available to spend in one bank account like it most likely is now, you're only limited to what you have allocated to your operating expense account. And so you've created this illusion of scarcity here to really keep those parameters on yourself is what you've done here. I like to think about it as kind of like that tube of toothpaste, right? You imagine like you've just bought a brand new tube of toothpaste. When you first get that tube of toothpaste, for me, I feel like it's never going to run out, right? If you're brushing your teeth and some drops on the sink, it's a little upsetting, but it's no big deal. If your spouse squeezes that tube of toothpaste from the middle, yes, it's a little annoying, but it's not worth getting divorced about. But what happens is as time goes by, as that toothpaste becomes less and less, as you find yourself rolling up that tube of toothpaste and you come to the point where there's more tube than there is toothpaste, then what happens is panic starts to seep in because you don't have time to go to the store anymore, right? You don't have time to stop by because your calendar's already filled. But what happens is you go, okay, if I can make this tube of toothpaste last one more day, and you squeeze half of what you would normally use, right? You just hope that there's enough for next time. That's exactly how it works in Profit First. On a day that my entrepreneurs have just been paid, they feel invincible, right? They feel like that the world is full of opportunities. They can hire that new support staff, buy that new computer. But as time goes by, as those spending decisions are made, right, as that bank account starts to dwindle, then panic starts to seep in. And panic starts to seep in because, maybe sales weren't great last week. And they start to wonder how they're going to make payroll after all. Maybe that computer purchase just wasn't such a good idea, right? Is what happens. So you're going to create these 5 bank accounts to create that illusion of scarcity there. So now let's go ahead and go back to, so we talked about our 5 bank accounts. And we talked about you are going to collect money into your income account twice a month. You're going to allocate it to the various bank accounts on the 10th and 25th of the month. And in that OPEX account, you're going to have to make some hard decisions, okay? And these are not going to be easy decisions. When we usually implement Profit First with a client, it's usually about an 18-month process. And for a lot of them, it's starting with a 1% profit allocation. And when they're looking at that OPEX account, they're asking themselves questions like, what no longer serves me, right? What no longer adds ROI or return on investment? They start to look at their vendor relationships, especially those long-term vendor relationships that they've always purchased things from this particular vendor because they just always did, right? And they start to wonder, are these relationships, are these prices still ideal? Maybe it's time for me to do our RFP for our procurement. Maybe it's time that we bid out these services or these products to make sure that we're getting the best value on these purchases. And for some of you, it's going to be looking around at your team members. Maybe you've got team members that have been with you since the beginning, those ride or dies, but maybe they don't have the innate skill to go with you to that next level. Maybe they don't want to go with you to that next level, right? Maybe they're not interested in growing your business. And so you're going to have to make decisions such as, do I need to sever these ties in order to do that? You're going to need to reevaluate for some of you, your long-term contracts. I know like we saw during COVID, a lot of folks didn't need those leases any longer, right? People were able to discover that they could go remote and they could go, not having an office, being a virtual type of environment. They no longer needed that traditional office space. And now that they found that this physical lease no longer serves them, the question becomes, how do I gracefully exit from this lease, right? Are there sublet opportunities where somebody that does need that space can take it over for me? Or can I even buy out this lease at a discount, right? So that I could just go ahead and no longer make those payments on it because I'm not using it anyway. And some of these long-term contracts can't be ended overnight. So you'll have to think about, how do I gracefully exit from these? And like I said, there's good news. These are not overnight decisions, right? It's about 18 months to really fully implement Profit First. And so what I recommend is that you focus on the gradual changes, right? You focus on the small things, right? Dues and subscriptions is a very easy line to focus on, and then gradually get to some of the larger categories. And one of the things that I will say that, you have to look at your journey, as a marathon versus a sprint. If I would tell you tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and run this marathon, most of you be like, Suzanne, today we're going to practice this marathon, the whole marathon. The next day, you're going to call me on the day of the marathon. And you're going to be like, hey, Suzanne, I decided to watch this on television, right? I'm going to be rooting for you, but I decided not to show up. But if I say, okay, instead of running this marathon tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're just going to walk a mile, right? We're going to walk a mile, then maybe walk 2 miles the next day. And then maybe the third day we'll run a mile. And what's going to happen is we're going to slowly build your stamina, right, over time. And what that's going to do is that's going to increase your likelihood for success significantly. And that's the same way it works with Profit First. It's the slow, gradual changes that's going to ensure your success versus the overnight, I'm going to cut straight to those percentages. It's the slow, gradual changes that's going to make you successful. The other thing that I would suggest too is starting with, what does winning really look like for you in your business? I think a lot of times as business owners, it's easy to get stuck in the doing, right? The doing, just getting things done. And there's a whole lot that comes with just sitting down and, first of all, really getting in touch with what do I want my business to look like? What does winning really look like for my business? And when I say this, it's not just the business, but even in your personal life, like how many hours a week do I actually want to be working, right? What is the lifestyle that I actually want to live? Do I want to continue to live frugal? Do I want to, be able to travel internationally and do great things? What is it that I really want for my life to look like? And not only that, but how much money do I need to earn in order to maintain that lifestyle, right? and be realistic about that. And once you figured that out, then it's the breaking it out algebraically. What must be true in order for this to be true? What changes do I need to make? How do I need to price? How do I need to position myself in order to achieve that lifestyle, right? And who do my customers need to be, and what price point does that need to happen, and where do they hang out, right? And this is going to take some algebra to figure out where do I need to do in order to get that, right? In terms of about the amount of money I need to generate, in terms of the amount of sales to provide me with the amount of profit, owner's pay, and it also taxes, right? I need to be able to put away enough taxes to cover my profit and my owner's pay, right? So I'm going to need to figure this out. And then once you figure out what that sales needs to look like in terms of dollar amount, what strategy do I need to implement in order to obtain this? For some of you guys, it's going to mean raising your prices, right? For some of you guys, it's going to mean exiting a line of business, because no matter what you do, there's no way that you can possibly win in this line of business, right? And I see this a lot in terms of lines of businesses that are highly commoditized, where there's so much competition that there's always somebody, and there's no impairments to entry, right? This is where I see that at. And in those cases where that industry is so commoditized, there may not be a realistic way to win in the long term for this contract. And in these cases, exiting that line of business may be the best move for that. For some of you guys, it's going to be looking at your organization, of looking at how do we get more efficient? How do we do more with less? How do we get things done faster with the same amount of costs, right? For some of you, it's going to be switching. For example, I don't think we have any healthcare providers here, but we're seeing this in the healthcare industry. We're seeing people having to switch from the insurance world, where someone is dictating what prices they can charge, into the world of private pay, right? Where your prices are based more upon your reputation and your individual quality of work. And these aren't easy decisions, right? This is going to take bravery. But the first step towards living the life that you want and reaching your goals of prosperity, this is where it starts. It starts with going, what does winning really look like for me? It's interesting because, some people have asked me, what's the hardest part about implementing Profit First? And I always laugh when people ask me this, because literally the hardest part is, just getting started. And what will happen is people will get excited about starting Profit First, and then they'll get stuck on questions like, where do I open my bank accounts? Or questions like, how do I lower my bank fees? And they'll get stuck in this analysis paralysis thing, right? It's like a deer in the headlights, and they never get started. And literally, you just have to get started. And for you, start with where you are today. Start with that 1% allocation from revenue into your profit account. Start with where you are today, and start with something small. Here's an example of what I call current allocation percentages. And one of the first things that you can do is just assess where you're at today. So take your tax return, take your last prepared tax return, or take your financial statements and plug the numbers. What is your profit right now? What amount is going into owner's pay? What amount is going into your tax account? What's going into your operating expenses? Figure out where you're at today, and then compare it to your Profit First percentages, okay? And then look at where the opportunity is, based upon where you're at today versus your Profit First recommended percentages. This is going to be your opportunity. This is what we call the bleed, right? This is called the bleed. And figure out, where do you need to increase your percentages over time in order to get to that goal, as where you can start with. And for many of you, it's going to be a reality check. I know when I first did this, it was a big reality check for me. But doing this is going to set the course for where you're going. And then once you've started, once you've done your analysis, just start small. Start with transferring 1% of your revenue into your profit bank account, and then build it from there. I'm a bit of a nerd, and there's this quote by Mark Twain. It's one of my favorite quotes. And Mark Twain says, "Is if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to eat the biggest. It's best to eat it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat two frogs, then eat the biggest one first." Sometimes in life, you just have to eat the frog. Don't delay in starting your profit first journey. Just get started. Don't lose out on the investment earnings. The stock market is just going to go up, okay? So put those profits to work, diversify your portfolio, because every day that goes by that you don't create profit, that you are not funding your retirement accounts, that's an opportunity cost for you. It doesn't get better by delaying it. So make your money work for you today. Start profit first today for you. Now, I do have homework for you. I want you to set up 5 bank accounts. I want you to set up a revenue bank account, a profit bank account, owner's pay bank account, a tax bank account, and an operating expense bank account. I just want you to start with 1%. I want you to start with shifting 1% of your revenue into a profit bank account. You can absolutely do this. Welcome to Profit First. Now, one of the questions that people ask me is, how do I avoid bank fees? And I will never tell you, first of all, to delay starting profit first due to bank fees. And instead, I would say, focus on how can you quickly build up that minimum balance so that you can cover your bank fees. But Profit First does have a relationship with a bank that will allow you to get up to 10 free bank accounts. It's an online bank. And this bank is FDIC insured. And Relay Bank is the bank. And Relay Bank will give you up to 10 free bank accounts for doing this. So if any of you want to do Relay Bank, I can put this link in the chat after we're done so that you can do this. But thank you guys for joining me today. And at this point, I can take any questions.
Feel free, if you have questions, to either drop them in the chat or we can take you off mute. Dalil, it looks like I see your hand raised. Do you have a question or? And I can take you off mute if that's helpful. Let's see.
Yes, he's off mute.
Okay. Dalil, did you have a question?
You just gotta unmute yourself.
You were trying to react. Got it. Let's see. Rose?
Hello. Hi. Thank you, Susan, for the great presentation. My question, so I'm a numbers person, so I apologize if I'm digging too deep, but
no, please do. We can talk numbers together.
So looking at the target allocation percentages, is just when it comes to the profit, I was wondering why the profit per allocation went down when you hit the 1 million mark. What was the idea behind that? When it went from 15, go ahead.
No, keep going. Sorry, Rose.
No, I was saying when it went from 15% down to 10, and then it starts climbing back up.
That is a great question here. And what's happening is, as this business grows, and this is a pretty big jump right here from A to B category, because usually at category A, this is a one-man show right here. So it's the owner doing everything. And when you see these increases in operating expenses, what's happening is it's usually because you're bringing in a key level of an employee. So in this case here, you're bringing in your first full-time employee, which could easily be a $50,000 to $100,000 salary. And so that's the reason why it's giving you that leeway for your next growth level in your scaling process.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know another big one that happens is between this $1 million to $5 million mark too. You'll see that OPEX actually goes down $150,000 if you're at that $1 million mark. And again, that's usually when you're bringing in that operations manager at that point, and that salary can easily be a 6-figure salary because you can no longer manage 7 people underneath you by yourself.
William, William, if you want to come off mute, you can ask your question.
Sure. Thank you, Suzanne. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Read Mike's books years back, and as we tried to implement this, one of the most difficult parts was the fight between, the cash basis viewpoint people and the accrual based viewpoint people, and when you get into the accountant saying, okay, what are we putting in the COGS, and then what is really an expense? Can we push that up above the line? And so, what guidance would you give on having those conversations in a cogent fashion so that everyone gets on the same page as others start their journey?
And that a lot of accountants have had problems with Profit First, and it's sad because it is such a great system, and I think one of the key ways to really kind of make that more digestible to your accountant is bringing it to them as a cash management system versus a accounting system. Profit First is not an accounting system. You still need those financial statements to do your taxes. You still need COGS calculated that way, especially if you're getting into valuations and potentially selling your business, or working with your banker, if there's compliance things. So you want your accounting to be your accounting, but the difference with Profit First, it's a cash management system. And so it's a system that's allowing you to create intentional profitability. And even like what we call mats and subs, materials and subcontractors. William, since you've already read the book, I know I didn't go into it deeply in our presentation because of time. Even COGS and mats and subs are not quite the same thing from an accounting perspective. So presenting them that this is a cash management system, this is what we do, but from an accounting perspective, they're going to keep doing things the same. You're going to see a lot more transfers that are going to be happening, but just account for those transfers like you do regular accounting is how I would let them know that. Thank you, William.
I see Sherelle had a question in the chat. Sherelle, do you want to come off mute? Otherwise, we can just answer the question that you've posed in the chat. The question was, if you have a JV, should I manage the income from those opportunities in an additional income account?
So you have a joint venture. So I'm assuming that in this case, you have a business that's a partner in the joint venture. Is that correct? Okay, I think Sherelle is saying that's correct. So ideally, I would want each company to stand on its own. So I want each company to be having its own Profit First program within its own self. And so that company is literally doing its own Profit First. And so this company is giving you profit distributions, right? Or if it's a joint venture, you might be getting guaranteed payments, which might be your owner's pay that's being allocated through that way. But every company ideally should have its own Profit First program where you're monitoring their metrics and saying, how are you performing? And each company has to stand on its own and be accountable for its own performance. Sherelle, I hope I answered your question for you.
And Chris, you can come off mute as well if you have a question. If you ever have any.
Okay. Hi, Suzanne. Thank you for the lovely presentation. My question is around the discipline of running this. So usually, if you can still see the money in your bank account, you may be tempted to use it. Would you suggest that one takes the profit and immediately puts it in an investment account? Thanks.
Good question. What happens in Profit First when we get rolling with it is every quarter we have a profit distribution is what we call it. And what happens is that 50% of the profit actually goes into a bank that I like to put in a bank that's far, far away. I like to use one of those community banks, one of those banks that look like you just walked into a Western town. They don't have any online banking. You have to go in and see a teller. And I take half of that profit distribution and I put it into this vault account that's at this local bank that's very not accessible. So kind of out of sight, out of mind. And then the other part that's left over after you've allocated to this vault account, if you have debt, you're going to do a debt snowball. So you're going to pay down your smallest debt first with this debt snowball. And if you don't have any debt, that's your money, Chris. That's your profit distribution. So just like you would invest like in a Procter & Gamble stock and they would give you a quarterly shareholder distribution, this becomes your shareholder distribution if you have no debt. Thank you, Chris. Great question.
Okay, last call for questions. Any last questions? Okay, well, Susanne, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for this remarkable presentation. I think I see a couple of, I have one more question in the chat. Sorry, before we wrap up. Do you have to pay taxes on that distribution was one question that popped up.
Got it. So the taxes on the profit distribution, I think is what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yes. And the great thing is you have the money in your tax bank account. So the money in your tax bank account is what you'll be able to use to pay the taxes on that. And then if you have money that's left over in that tax bank account after you funded your taxes, you can either put that into your 401k, right? Or you can take that as an additional profit distribution.
Awesome. And I see Keith has a question. Is there an ideal way to manage the appropriate level of operating cash?
So Keith, I would say, first of all, you're going to ease into profit first. So like when I talked about, when I work with clients, it usually takes at least 18 months. So you're not going to be able to get out of some of your commitments immediately. And so one of the things that we do with our clients is we do a 30-day cash flow projection where we figure out what are the bills that are coming up within the next 30 days. So we know, and that also includes debt payments too. So if you've got debt payments, those need to be factored in as part of that cash budget. And then we go, what amount of revenue needs to cover that and plus produce for that particular quarter what our percentage of profit, owner's pay, and tax needs to be. And then we look at a strategy from a sales perspective, what needs to happen for that to happen.
Great. And looks like we have one last question from Lonnie. What percentage of profit is reallocated?
So in terms of reallocated, tell me what you mean by reallocated. Because I don't put profit back when once it's out.
Lonnie, can we take you off mute and you can clarify your question? All right, I think Luis, is Lonnie off mute? Okay, sorry. Lonnie, go ahead and pop on.
There you go, Lonnie. You should be able to take yourself off of mute.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, as you're looking to grow, how are you reallocating some of that profit? Is it just that you're just shifting around and paying more on the operating expenses? I see that, but it seems like it's the 65% is staying kind of flat once you over that $1 million mark. So, I guess as we're talking about growing, how are we reallocating? Or if we're not reallocating any profit, then how are we helping fund that growth?
So first of all, as your revenue grows, the amount of money that goes towards operating expenses as well as profit increases, right? Because we're talking about a percentage. So as you go from 1 million to 2 million, there's the amount of money changes also. So you're going to get more funding to scale your growth is what's going to happen.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
And as you're looking at investments, one of the things that we're looking at is determining what's the ROI on each expense. So what's that return on investment for each expense? And we like to give it a time limit before we even start. So we're starting a marketing initiative. We're going to give that marketing initiative, we're going to have an evaluation of that marketing initiative for 30 days. we're going to have an evaluation at 60 days, and we're going to have an evaluation at 90 days. And if it's not at our target, we're probably going to cut it off. And so when we're looking at advertising expense, we're looking at getting a 10 times ROI on that advertising expense. So it's a lot of it is coordinating what we're spending money for, and what's the ROI for that spend. And each expense has to be producing an ROI. Our team members, we're expecting an ROI of at least 3 times costs, 3 to 4 times costs.
Thank you so much, Susanne. I think we're at time, and so as a CTA, how can folks get in touch with you? How can folks take advantage of, if you offer any consultations, etc., to help grow their business and start implementing the Profit First methodology?
So the best way to reach me is SusanneMariga.com. There's they can fill out information there to do that, and then the book is a great resource too.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. We are so grateful for your time today. And if you enjoyed this presentation, we just ask that you share about it on LinkedIn. Tell the rest of the community far and wide what value BCPA is bringing to you as we get amazing speakers like Susanne that we had today. So thank you all. Have a wonderful Wednesday and take care.